Tania, welcome to your own podcast.
Thank you. It's really exciting.
Now, this is kind of a getting to know you episode, so that people who haven't met you, haven't spoken to you, don't know anything about you, but are interested in what you have to talk about, will find out a bit more about you, find out about your background, your experience, your expertise. So I suppose the first question should be, how did you get into HR in the first place?
I would say it was probably nearly 20 years ago now when I was kind of floundering in terms of my career. I'd worked at JP Morgan and was currently working at the Daily Echo, but I didn't really get any job satisfaction. It was more of a job rather than a career. So I decided to do an online psychometric profile questionnaire because I thought, well, that might be useful in terms of, what kind of options would be good for my personality and in terms of career. So the results of the questionnaire highlighted my suitability to either HR or marketing. And I think I was just more intrigued about human resources and what that would involve. So I basically did some research on the internet, looked at the various websites like CIPD and ACAS. And I think really it was about the fact it's about people, which is an interest of mine, but also the variety that HR brings. I just thought this is going to be quite an interesting, exciting career. So I did my certificate in personnel practice, and I then went on to do my master's in human resource management afterwards in the evenings. And I absolutely love studying the field. I just found, it's such an interesting topic. Unfortunately, at that time, it wasn't very easy to get an HR job. Every job I went for tended to need some experience. So whilst I was actually proactively studying, I didn't have the experience. So I took a week off holiday from my paid job at the Daily Echo at that time. And I went and did some unpaid work experience in the HR department at Bournemouth Hospital. And I think that was the best thing I could have done because I learned so much during that time, and it enabled me to apply for a job at Poole Hospital in the HR department as an Improving Working Lives project assistant. And just that tiny bit of experience, that unpaid work experience that I could pull upon at my interview, secured me my first HR job.
Wow. The whole thing about working with people, that was something that was always there for you. It was something that was, I suppose, maybe unfulfilled perhaps in previous roles, and it just felt the right thing to do. And actually all that studying and extra effort you were having to go to sort of realign your career with those values, it didn't feel like you were having to do lots of work because actually you were really enjoying finding out more.
Absolutely. I found the whole kind of psychological side of it interesting as well. So, what makes people, motivated at work? What makes people feel happy at work? At the end of the day, we spend so much time at work. You want people to be happy. And I think it was partnering with the business to help them be a better employer and do right by their people. That is probably my biggest passion, but it's the people side of things. So, yeah.
So getting that first step on your HR career ladder was obviously an important one. And how did it sort of go from there? What was sort of the next step for you?
So I worked at Poole Hospital. It was a fixed term contract, but that had given me at least some kind of experience in HR. I then went on to work at Dorset County Council in the schools HR team. And from there, I worked at McCarthy and Stone. So I think, getting that kind of stepping stone from Poole Hospital and then getting some experience in different sectors was really beneficial. McCarthy and Stone was a great employer. I was there a long time. I learned a lot about HR and about people management practices and HR strategy. So that was really quite important. And then I just got an interest in consulting. I was studying for my master's in human resource management back in 2005 with a lady who actually worked for an HR consultancy. And to me, it just sounded like the best job ever. And I think that it kind of formed my ultimate goal. I wanted to not just work for one organisation in the corporate world as an HR professional, but actually provide an outsourced service to lots of different SME businesses. And I think that's where, the variety of different industries, different challenges, different frustrations just makes the job even more interesting and varied.
Because I suppose when you're working for a particular employer, you get to know the workforce, you get to know the culture of the business, you get to know the policies and practices of the business really, really well. But being able to diversify and work with lots of different organisations, you can sort of see different ideas that are working, ones that are not working. You can maybe suggest ones that you've picked up from one organisation that would work for another, and it gives you a much broader base of experience.
Yes, absolutely. And I think you do need that when you go into consulting. Every industry is different. There's different kind of nuances. There's different regulatory requirements. So I've enjoyed working in the education sector because you've got the added complexities of, safeguarding children. You've got the added complexities, with Ofsted. And then, there's other industries like the healthcare sector. Again, there's more regulation. So I think having that variety there's always the fundamental HRs, there's always the kind of core HR requirements. But I think it's great that actually if you work in lots of different organisations, you get that exposure to their particular, like you say, the culture, the nuances, the different regulations, the different challenges.
And at the heart of it, you're working with people. So people are similar, not the same, but, have similar frustrations. They have similar issues, similar topics, I assume, come up frequently within the work that you do.
Yes, yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's always going to be typical people-related challenges for businesses. But, I think this is it makes it so varied because actually you could be providing that kind of reactive, what I like to say, employee relations type support where you're dealing with the issues, the problems, the challenges, helping employers to navigate the risks that are associated with that. But then on the other hand, HR, there's some really, great positive tasks and support that you can provide an organisation that's more forward focused, that's more strategic, that's really adding that important value that HR can bring to an organisation.
And I think sometimes people believe that HR consultants are only brought in when things are happening, when, for example, there's a redundancy process or where there's a grievance process that requires that outside external counsel. But actually, you are and probably should be involved a lot earlier.
Yes, definitely. I think that's absolutely key to minimising risks when it comes to being an employer and the obligations that you have. The more, I suppose, compliance processes, policies, practices you can put in place, it just gives you that kind of fundamental basics. And then if you manage your workforce in a proactive way, if you really try and understand what makes them tick, and if you really try and engage with them and motivate them and get the best out of them, actually it reduces the amount of issues, employee relations issues and problems that you have. So absolutely, it's really important for HR to be very proactive in their outlook on supporting clients.
Now, it's clear that you love HR consulting, but I'm guessing you've probably got some frustrations. What's your biggest one, would you say, as a consultant?
The biggest frustration is the first interaction I tend to have with a prospect client or a new client. It's something we call the HR Audit, HR Health Check. And basically, this is a very important start on the journey a consultant has with a client because it helps you understand what level of compliance risk there is. So I've spent probably close to 100 hours of my time doing HR audits. I tend to offer a 1 hour free HR audit to any business. I use that as a bit of a lead magnet to start generating a conversation with them in the first place. The reality is that 1 hour free HR audit actually, in reality, because there's so many facets to HR, I could be on a call for 2 hours going through my HR audit questionnaire. And then, of course, there's typing up a report afterwards. There's ragging it red, amber, green to highlight, where their highest level of risk is and helping them kind of prioritise that. So I think I've spent a lot of time doing that process heavily manually. It's an important process, but I think the biggest frustration for me was born out of the fact that I had a prospect client book in my diary free 1 hour HR audit, and they didn't turn up on the call several times. And so by the third or fourth time, I was getting frustrated because I was working my day around that appointment with them, and that they didn't turn up. I think at that point I was thinking there's got to be something out there that can automate and streamline this heavily manual-based process. And so I think that's where I started to think about what technology is there out there, some kind of HR compliance tool that would be compliant with employment legislation that I could use to speed up that process. Unfortunately, I couldn't find anything, so I wanted to solve this problem, find a solution, not just for myself, but also for other HR consultants who, might be leaving the corporate world and might be looking to come along into the HR consulting world. 12 months ago, I didn't know what a SaaS was or what a MVP was. And so I just have loved the fact that I've learned so much more about a different industry, and I'm really excited to launch this shortly.
So talk us through this tool. It's a white label tool for HR consultants, and they can use it with prospects and existing clients?
That's correct, yeah. So it's going to be white labelled and branded in the HR consultants' branding colours and logo. And it's a tool for them to support their clients with an in-depth analysis of their level of HR compliance. It's designed and developed for the HR consultant in mind, and it offers a clear roadmap to enhance the compliance and streamline processes for the client. But it also enables the HR consultant to package up their services accordingly so that it's really meeting the needs of the client.
So does it look at what the clients have got in place already, their policies and procedures, and where that could be improved?
Yeah, so basically it's a questionnaire that's broken down into 8 key categories when it comes to employment legislation, health and safety and GDPR. And the output to those questions, depending on how they're answered, will provide a visual representation in terms of the risk level. So red, amber, green, there'll be a speedometer rating. So if the client actually does have quite a lot of the practices, processes, policies in place, then their rating should be faring better than perhaps if they don't have them, which will be a positive for them to be able to see. The tool will then generate a bespoke HR diagnostic report for each of those 8 categories with a clear action plan, so that there is a clear process in terms of the outputs from that report and how you remedy the risks, what needs to be done to remedy the risks. So it could be used by the HR consultant just to kind of get the baseline, how compliant is the organisation, but it could also be used as a starting point for the HR strategy of an organisation.
And as things change, as legislation, for example, changes and obviously compliance then shifts slightly, will this be updated for that?
Yes, absolutely. I've been working in accordance with employment lawyers and GDPR specialist and also health and safety specialist. And this tool will be kept live at all times. So we won't wait until employment legislation changes. It will be kept up to date live on a daily basis.
Excellent. So how can people find out more about this?
Basically launching the diagnostic tool in May 2024. So HR consultants will be able to access this tool via the HR Diagnostics website. They will complete various pages, uploading their own branding colours, their own logos, their own landing images. They'll also be able to put their own photos on, their team members on.
And just in terms of the podcast, obviously this is an introductory episode, but there are plenty more to come. What sort of issues and topics will you be covering?
We'll be covering lots of different topics to help employers and HR consultants support the clients in terms of their obligations as an employer. We'll be talking about things like dignity and respect, about the Equality Act, anti-bullying and harassment. So, the kind of actions that you need to take as an employer to protect people from discrimination in the workplace. We'll be covering a whole section on the employment contract, the key contractual terms you need within the contract of employment. We're going to be looking at what the essential policies and procedures are, so the basic policies that you need in order to be compliant. We're going to be looking at pay and benefits in terms of what you need to do as an employer to meet the minimum kind of statutory pay and benefits. We're going to be looking at workplace safety. So I'll be getting a health and safety specialist on the podcast to chat through what is required of an employer from a health and safety perspective, and also the same with a GDPR specialist in terms of what employers need to be aware of when it comes to GDPR and data protection regulations.
So a really comprehensive menu of things that are going to be covered on the podcast, and certainly a must listen.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. I'm really excited to bring in different specialists to the podcast and invite them to have a good conversation about all these topics.
Well, good luck with HR Diagnostics. Good luck with the podcast. It's been great to speak to you.
It's been fantastic talking to you too, Steve. Thank you so much.